What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's IPK Kids IRL here. And what I have for you today is how to build the Charlemagne control team like a Chad. So, got a lot to talk about today, but let's dive right on into it. I'm going to mainly be kind of showcasing about two different avenues I think Charlemagne can be built. I think Charlemagne is pretty linear in terms of what you want to put on him, but who you put with him really decides the battlefield. So let's first talk about Charlemagne. Let's run through some of his abilities, what we can possibly put on him, and really how we can make this team pretty much free to play for the most part. Even if you draw a purple one, you can still do an insane amounts of damage with him. So let's do Paladin Regime. You just launch a tactical attack against one single enemy, high damage rate, caps out at 650%. So it's going to kind of be anywhere from 600 to 650% at max. But the big kicker is if the target's already controlled, you increase your own probability of casting active skills in this round by 20%. That applies to yourself. So let's just say right here, for instance, I have Warrior Cavalry and Heart of Avalon on him. This would now go up to 55, and this would now go up to 55 as well. So big hit right there. That will increase the amount of damage that you're doing. I think probably the next best ability on him is going to be really Heart of Avalon. I have it placed last, and I'll kind of talk about it here in a second. But Heart of Avalon, really crucial on him. I don't really think you need to be moving this around too much. I think this is a pretty staple, and you get it for the rubbing room. I will make a video talking about the rubbings, but pretty much you get it for free. You do. You get it for free as long as you play. You can pretty much activate Heart of Avalon and get it for free. At max, mind you, so double S rank. So this ability, you launch one tactical attack to 2 enemy units. You deal pretty much a huge amount of damage, 286%. If the target's already being controlled, you then heal wounded troops or random ally at 320% at max cast. Humongous amounts of healing from an ability that you really don't even need healing from. It's really just tacked on there, and it does a huge amount of damage. The damage is very nice as well. Let's talk about Warrior Cavalry. So Warrior Cavalry, you launch one tactical attack to 2 enemy units at a rate of 260. So it's a little bit less, it's about 220 to 260 around that margin. And then you increase your own damage dealt by 10% for one round. So that's pretty crucial right there. I think that this benefit is humongous whenever you pile it onto whatever he's naturally doing, right? Whether it be his main ability, this ability proccing again in the next turn, and then Heart of Avalon as well, doing a lot of damage, synergizes well with what he's doing. I believe the recommended is is it Multi-Seagull? Yeah, it's Multi-Seagull is the next best one. I have a hard time doing this one because it's just one tactical. It is for 550%, humongous damage. It's very close to his own. If the attack hits the enemy commander, you'll inflict chaos, which means the attacks and skills do not distinguish between enemies and allies. So it's a lot like Confusion, almost identical, or anti-healing. So I really believe that the increased damage that you're going to do right here, I wouldn't focus so much on the Maltese Eagle so long as you're doing increased damage overall. The damage is very similar, right? If you're doing 2 damage to... Now, it is different if it's hitting the chief, right? If that's one always hitting the chief, it's a pretty good ability. But I do like the ability for him to do basically AoE damage and hitting the whole team. Your main ability is already doing a lot of single target damage. It really does it nice to also spread this around and do damage to multiple targets. So those are the 3 main abilities. Now, let's talk about Sword of the Ottoman real quick, because this is going to be probably his bread and butter, and you also get this for free as well from the season pass whenever you get the best rubbing in the game. Basically, it's you get to activate it, and this is one of the abilities you can choose from, which I would highly suggest if you draw an Awakened Charlemagne. So, you perform a tactical attack to 1 enemy unit, pretty much maxed out at 360%. That might be a little bit lower than what you're thinking for one enemy target, but you decrease their highest attribute by 12% as well. If they're underneath Disarm, Silence, Stun, Exhaustion effect, you will then activate this sucker twice. Not to mention too, it's already at a 60% activation rate if you proc your main ability. So you've got a lot of things going for this ability to get it off and keep this thing pumping. 12%, that's big as well. So if you're hitting this against a tank, you're going to lower their defense basically by 12%. Or if you're facing a damage dealer like an assault, you're going to cut their strength by 10%, 10 to 12%, give or take. And then, not to mention too, if you activate this again, this ability, there's no there is no distinguishing. You know, there is no how do I phrase it? There is no percentage chance of the other part of this going off. If they are already disarm silent stun effect, it automatically happens again. There's not a percentage chance that it will happen. It will happen. So, big key point right there. This ability is absolutely broken. Everyone really knows it. This is not too out of the norm. You know, this is a pretty standard setup. Any 4 of these abilities, multi-signal, you can put it in here and experiment with it on your own. What I've been seeing as well, and kind of what I've been talking about with other people who also run this team as their main in PvP, Warrior Cavalry is doing very well. Heart of Avalon is a must, though. Heart of Avalon is a must. So let's talk about the people that are going to be supporting him, because they are the most crucial ones, and the way that you build them is going to be crucial. First one up is Yi Sun Sin. I do think he is pretty crucial, especially for free to play. You get him for free as Korean, and you get to basically keep upgrading him as well. So very, very big right there. Inflicts either silence or disarm randomly to 2 enemy units for 1 round. If they're already silenced, disarm, exhaustion state, you then inflict stun on them for 1 round. So you already, and as y'all saw, sort of the Ottomans, these either silence, disarm, or stun. So you're proccing pretty much everything but exhaustion at this point. We will focus around a build that does do exhaustion, but for the time being, though, you now are inflicting 3/4 out of the things that's going to keep Charlemagne's abilities always going off for control effects, right? So you have so much synergy going off right there with just this one ability. So this ability goes up in activation rate. It doesn't actually do any damage, and you might be thinking, why would I just put a damage user here? The main reason why is because you can get this activation up pretty high as well at 36%, and you're doing this to 2 enemies. This isn't just 1 enemy, this is 2, so this is very crucial. Parthenon Tactics, I think, is the next best thing. The reason why I would choose Parthenon Tactics over Highest Honor is because the amount of burn teams, the amount of other control teams, the amount of actives going off on most teams is far superior right now to auto-attacking teams like the Assault team and maybe even the Hannibal team, for instance. So, huge. It's not really about the damage. It's about if your main ability doesn't go off, this is going off, and also casting silence as well. So you have a lot of different effects going off right here as well. It's pretty just basic. It's just how much you can inflict the ability or inflict control statuses on the enemy person as well. Pretty much as well. You don't really have to use a lot of these as well. You know, you can use support abilities on him, but we're mainly going to talk about using those on the tank, for instance. Pacify the North, if you get this ability on him and you don't have Peter, right, this is the next best person to put it on. It really is. You gain Swift, you pretty much inflict an enemy with disarm, silence, or stun, taking assault damage. You want 1 physical attack. You know, you're massive at this point. I wouldn't put Victory Prayer with that, though. I would do probably Parthenon Tactics, Towering Worship, and Pacify the North, for instance, on him, if you want to go down that route. Pendulum, I would mainly stick on your tank. So, now one thing, too, if you're not using Pacify the North, you need to make sure he is the fastest person on your team, because Swift allows you to be the fastest person, with you being the first person to attack. So right here, I have 164 speed on mine. I put a couple points in attack just because, you know, my guy's probably the fastest right now. Charlemagne 130. So I also want to make sure that my guy is faster than pretty much anyone. Right? I want to try and proc my control effects before anyone else. That's the reason why you want to focus pretty much all of your points, really. You don't really have to, but he's already got a 2.49 attack modifier. He doesn't really need much more. I just have the points in there just to kind of give him a little bit of damage right now. So pretty standard build, though. I don't think there's too much to change right here. So very good free to play. I will talk about the other team building option after we get done with the main one that you can build pretty much right away. So let's talk about probably the most controversial pick in this right here, and I'm going to talk about a lot of the other options as well, because the Taunt Tank, or really just the supporting tank, is definitely the most talked about one and where you're going to place them. So right here, Constantine is a very good card. Very good card. He works very well with Charlemagne as it is. But at the start of battle, though, you're going to have pretty much a 55 to 60% chance of decreasing damage dealt by 2 enemies. Huge right there. during the preparation round, every subsequent round, you're going to have a 60% chance to taunt 2 enemies for 1 round. Taunting is basically like confusion. So, I wish it was procking up the thing right here to kind of just show you, but it is a control effect that allows them to basically hit themselves. So, very big thing right there, 60% chance, and it's a command. It goes off 100% of the time. There's no way for him to be CC'd and this not be affecting the enemy team. Very big. In each round, when hit by a normal attack for the first time, so basically if he gets auto-attacked, you're going to increase the damage dealt and healing effect of a random ally by pretty much 21% at max cast. So for 1 round. So you're increasing Charlemagne or Yi Sun Sin's healing effect and damage, which isn't like the biggest deal, right? You're not really too worried about Yi Sun Sin, but if this procs on Charlemagne, for instance, humongous damage already on top of whatever he's doing. So, and this will follow him into the next round, right? If your Charlemagne does all of his abilities and then you get hit, right, it will still follow him into the next round. So, then it would go away. So, very nice right there. Just before I talk about the other abilities first, I want to mention the 2 other people that you can also put. Alexander, as y'all know, y'all definitely been using him if you've gotten him in the event at the start of the map. In the first 4 rounds, you have a 75% chance of inflicting taunt to 3 enemies. Huge. I mean, the compels enemies to attack themselves. You're not attacking enemies, but you are attacking. This applies to both skills and normal attacks. So if they literally if you have an enemy Charlemagne that's casting abilities, he could smack himself right in the face with his own abilities, for instance. So very big right there. I think he is such a great option as well. I think that really right now, you can kind of pick and choose right now. I think as the meta goes on, right? As the meta goes on into the last seasons, this will be finely tuned, right? The perfect setup will eventually come about. But right now, though, you could pretty much use any of the 3 taunt tanks and get away with it and do very well. I've been beaten in the arena, and I've based all of my findings in all of this off of whatever I've seen in the arena and in the open battlefield about the Charlemagne teams and about whatever I've also collected from other people that are using this team. So keep that in mind as well. Each target is independently determined. Last 1 round also decreases self-damage received by 15%. So you can use him right here. And then the last one I want to talk about for the taunt tank position is Hellman. Or Herman, however you want to call him. Aquila Burning. It's basically exactly what Constantine does, but just a little bit weaker. He gets the option of inflicting 1 or 3. It's huge if he inflicts 3, obviously, but he only has a 50% chance of doing that. It is every round, though. It's a command effect. And then you also cause the targeteds to also then target self first, and then you decrease their defense by 30 for 1 round. So it's okay. It doesn't really help Charlemagne, for instance. Or it does, but it's not a huge number. It's not a percentage. I think if this was a percentage, I think it'd be a lot better. But 30 is not really too much, just based off of what Herman has. He already has 200 for reference. 30 isn't going to knock him down a whole lot, but it will do some additional damage. And then at the same time, you increase defense of self and a random ally by, I think it's 15 for 1 round. So I think it's fair. He's just a little bit of a weaker version of Constantine himself, and that's pretty obvious in his skill effects. Now let's talk about the abilities that you can also pair on him as well. I think that there's just an infinite number, right, of abilities that you can really put on these to support. I'll talk about a few. Reservationist mobilization. I think this is a good skill nonetheless. This allows your team to have some healing right off the start. I think that's very important. Just in case taunting does not exactly work, you have some backup healing, right? Until Heart of Avalon really starts to kick in and start healing in the later rounds. Upon taking damage, you have 50% chance of healing wounded troops. At the start of the 4th battle, you'll hear massive amounts of damage for all allied troops. So it's a command effect. It goes off 100% of the time. You don't need to worry about it. So very basic healing. But I do think that if the taunting is not working, if you're getting controlled effect, this is a backup to keep you in play. The Spanish, I can't say the last part, but during the first 3 rounds, decreases the damage taken by 2 ally units by pretty much up to 30%. Very basic again. There's a lot of different abilities. This one specifically that you could swap out. You don't have to use the Spanish here. You can use Frozen Earth. I'll talk about that one. That is without a doubt what I would replace this with. Unfortunately, I don't have it. I would actually be using that instead. But I think this is a great substitute right now for for that. You can also use Pendulum here. Pendulum is a great ability right here as well. I think if I had an infinite amount of Pendulums, they'd probably be on every single one of my team because I think it's that good. It inflicts exhaustion. And as you saw, that is also an ability that Charlemagne can also proc off of, and Yi Sun-sin can also proc off of. So I think right here, this is a great option. If it wasn't being used on another team, it would be right here. So, let's talk about Frozen Earth real quick. Will it pop up right here? It will not. Alright, so let's go over here to these skills. And without a doubt, I think that I like using Frozen Earth so much is partially because it is a blue skill and you can get it. Or Frozen Front. I'm sorry, it's Frozen Front. For the first 5 rounds, you decrease the damage dealt by both sides by 25%. And then when taking damage, or when taking action, increases the damage taken by any unit underneath this Slurm, Silent, Stun, Exhaustion state by 34%. If you pair this up with Pendulum, you're doing an insane amount of damage right off the start from your team, right? And they cannot stop it. You can't stop that. The enemy team would then have to counter this with their own control team. But if you're facing an assault team, you're facing a burn team, you have the utmost advantage on them, right? Because you're the one inflicting this. They are not. This is all units. This affects yourself. This can be a double-edged sword. But most of the time, though, this is going to be benefiting you more than the enemy team. But the amount of damage output that you're going to get from this is well worth the curved. Basically, the double-edged sword. So, that's kind of my couple of opinions, right? So basically, recap it real quick. Basically, a TLDR, Charlemagne, High Damage, Boyar Cavalry, Heart of Avalon, Sword of the Ottomans, and Maltese Eagle are all great abilities on him. Yi Sun-sin, Towering Warship, Parthenon Tactics, Highest Honor, Victory Prayer, and Pacify the North if you want to go that hard on it. Constantine as well, main ability, Reservationist, Mobilization, Spanish Tuxedo, Pendulum, Frozen Front. I think if you even have Bohemian War Wagon, that'd be insane as well. I do think using like one support healing aspect or damage reduction, and then also kind of pairing that up with another control aspect, I think that is fantastic. You can also use Roman Legion here. Or Roman Shield Legion, that's fine. You can just mass tank, right? You can just mass tank. You can use Lord of the Seven Seas as well. That's fine. It's just it doesn't proc the effects as much as I would like it to. As well, Super Spear Phalanx. I don't think you need to worry too much about taking the damage on Constantine so much as just supporting your allies basically and buffing them up. So that is my main guide to the more basic Season 1 team. Now, I'll talk quickly, as much as I can, about the 2 people that I think you can also add to it to make an even more wild team. For instance, this is more of a theory crafting team, but this will be probably what I'm using Season 2 to start. Peter. Peter's main ability, basically, you have 100% proc rate. You immediately silence or disarm someone. Very good skill, especially if you're moving first. The chance of the skill being triggered is 100%, and then it knocks down by 15% every time. If the target's already underneath a control effect, then the skill rate will not have a triggered effect go down on it, and then they'll get urgent aid, which means that they will be, they'll get healing no matter what. So, whenever they're damaged. Pacify the North, and this is a very expensive team, mind you. This is very expensive to pull off compared to the Yi Sun-sin, Hellman, and Charlemagne, right? This is such a leap in terms of what it would cost to pull out. I think that you will have some varying results, and I do think that you can possibly pull this off, especially with some of the other cavalry specialties. Imagine a winged hussar team just running you down, right? You're already strong enough, right? But you can't escape them. You can't escape the Charlemagne team if they're running around with winged hussars. So, you gain swift means you act first. You don't need to specialize in speed. You can just focalize. You can just focus and attack. So whenever he launches a physical attack, though, to another enemy unit, you put them underneath exhaustion. So, or whenever they're disarmed, silenced, or stunned, you'll launch an attack. His main ability already does that, so he's automatically proccing exhaustion, which means, as you guys have seen, works well with everyone, right? You reduce their strength by pretty much a high number, 32. Absolutely fantastic ability. Pairs really well with them. Highest honor, I would definitely swap this out and put, was it Parthenon Tactics? Yeah, it is Parthenon Tactics. Yeah, Parthenon Tactics I would swap out and go back to using Silence instead. But it's basically the same thing as Parthenon Tactics, just with disarm instead. So, fine ability there. And I'm trying not to take off too much time because it's a bit more of a theory crafted. But you would use Queen Seon right here. I think she would be such a good pairing with Peter and Charlemagne. So, upon entering battle, you immediately decrease all the damage taken by 8%, and then you gain, at the beginning of battle, you gain immunity once, nullifying a control effect. Just right off the bat. Just right off the bat. When an ally hero casts an active skill, right, you have a pretty much 40% chance of inflicting composure, which means you decrease damage taken by 16%, which means on, Charlemagne and Peter, you have a lot of damage reduction going off. Pretty much right here, I would focus around using like Roman Shield Legion. Right here, I wouldn't go too much with what they've kind of are recommending because this is a bit of a different build. So Spartan Rampart would also be very good at right here as well. So there's a couple different ways you could build this. You know, you would want to stick with basically what you're putting, but you would need to substitute that taunting with something else, right? So that's the reason why I would suggest, you know, Roman Shield Legion instead, and basically you want to be taunting instead. So I would definitely sub in that right there and definitely give that team a little bit more CC. And then I would probably do Spartan Rampart. I think that would be fine. Get a little bit of healing in there, a lot like what we were talking about. Or you could pretty much take exactly what we put on Constantine and then swap it around. I wouldn't do Spanish right here. You don't need that much damage reduction. Her main ability is already taking care of that. But Reservationist Mobilization would also be fantastic as well. So I think I've talked enough about these teams. I do think right now that these are the meta teams right now with Charlemagne. And I can firmly stand by that, especially with what I've seen in the battlefield and everything in between. But without further ado, guys, thank you so much for watching if you've made it this far. Thank you for the support, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.